Hi, this is Pooka again. I'm going to do a very short introduction to some logic pieces, which are in the gadgets menu here. And I did have a request on Twitter to cover timers, so that's going to be part of my introduction to logic. I'm going to mainly focus on using these gadgets for animation purposes, just because that's what I've been doing a lot of myself, and so it's an easy way to talk about it. So the timer is found in the logic and processing section, and when you're actually creating something, I would say always use a microchip, but for the purpose of this demonstration, I'm just going to bring out one gadget at a time. I'm going to open up the timer. It's pretty similar to the Little Big Planet timer, but it does have some extra features. It has an output on the target time and the current time. It has an output for pulse, which is really handy. If you want a timer to be recurring, you just take the pulse output and you link it back around to the reset timer, and when you play the scene, it will automatically count up to its 5-second target time and reset and do it again. It also has separate timers for its general output and for its finished signal. So I'm going to use this little Media Molecule logo here, which is something that comes with the game, to demonstrate some of the features here. If I just do the finished signal, let's see, let me bring this up. I'm going to take the hue cycle and I'm going to turn it to pink. And I'm going to take the finished signal and plug it in over here. And then I'm going to run the scene, and as we watch, the timer counts down. Nothing is going to happen until it gets all the way to the end, and then it just turns pink and stays that way. Now I'm going to take the output signal and I'm going to plug it in to the same point. Oops. I dropped my wire by accident. And now, when I roll the scene, we have a gradual fade-in happening. So that sort of shows the difference between the finished timer and the timer output. If I were to do the pulse, we'll see what happens here. When I reset and roll the scene, it's just going to flash pink for a moment, and then it resets back to where it was. You can also use the current time output. In regard to this painting, it will actually do the same thing as far as using it as a dimmer. But if you go in here and you choose a selector, if you rig up the, sorry, just a minute, let me turn this up to 5 options on the selector because we have 5 seconds on the timer. And if I go for the current time output, and then I move this to the active port, as I play the scene, watch what happens. Every time that it hits a 1-second mark, it cycles to another output on the selector. So there's all sorts of ways that you could use that. And you could also achieve the same thing on this timer if you had, on the selector. If you had a 1-second timer that did a pulse signal to move to the next output, it would cycle through every second. And if if the timer is resetting, it would do that indefinitely. But by using the current time output, it just goes through the sequence once, unless you reset the timer, of course. So that can be an interesting way of just cycling through all the options on a selector one time versus a repeated cycling. I'm going to get rid of those now. That's pretty much it for the timer. You do also have, similar to Little Big Planet, you can change it from count up to a speed, positional, or countdown. Now that's really handy for tweaking animations, but I'm going to show you something else, which is the keyframe. And the keyframe is really great for changing a whole bunch of stuff at once. The keyframe can be found in the Animate tab. And as soon as I stick it down, I'm recording. And it will now record all the changes I make. You can take this thing and you can move it, rescale it, rotate it a little bit. All of this is going to happen on the keyframe, but it's not like the action recorder. It's only recording the finishing state. It's not recording the gestures that I go through. And so I could take it and say, I'm going to put it back down to blue hue there, and I'm going to go into the effects. I'll turn off the effects that it had going already, and instead I'll give it a really strong evaporation effect. And then I'm also going to go in here and change the looseness. And as you can see, I can turn things up or down. It's not like the output on the timer where it's just going to go sort of from left to right as the timer increases. I can make any sorts of changes that I want to in here. I could tweak the opacity a little bit, make it glow some more. So all of that is happening on this one keyframe. I think I'll even go over here and give it a little bit of a physical wind effect. Maybe not too much. Now if I select the keyframe, I see the finished state. And if I deselect it, then it goes back to normal. And while I play the scene, nothing happens because the keyframe is not activated. Now you could activate the keyframe using a timer, a trigger zone, all sorts of things. But for animation effects, I find that there's a really handy thing here, which is the signal generator. I'm going to stamp that down, and we'll just look at it really quickly. The scene is playing, so you can see that it's sort of running through its cycle right now. And if I reset the scene, oops, I stamped that down while it was running, so I'm just going to pause the scene and stamp one down fresh here. So it has some different sliders down here for range values, which, to be honest, I haven't played with a whole lot. But the main thing that you want to look at is the sweep seconds. And oops, you can just grab the output on that, and you can connect it to the keyframe. And I'll open this menu so that we can watch it go through. And now when I play the scene, it's creating this wave and the keyframe is easing in and out. And if I want to slow it down, I can change the sweep seconds to make it really slow. And this is really great for creating all sorts of animated effects. And it's also handy for making sculptural shadows for a painting, because we talked about animated paintings being a really good thermometer saving tool, but the fact that they don't have any shadows might not always work in your scene. So then you're going to need to make a sculpture that has shadows, and if you want those shadows to move, you can use the keyframe to create some movement really easily. And you can use keyframes to change settings on characters. You can use keyframes to do almost anything. You can't use a keyframe to actually stamp an object into a scene or make changes within a sculpture or a painting, but you can make changes. Anything that you can do in assembly mode, you can do with a keyframe, like scaling, rotation, all that kind of stuff. If you're not happy with the keyframe, you can press R1 and X, and now we're in here and we're gonna edit its final position. And again, it doesn't record what you're doing. I can take this and move it all over the place. It's not recording any of that. It just records where it ends up. And so I could take it and rotate it. And, you know, maybe I decided that I don't like the glow after all, and I want to take the glow out completely. And now I change it, and when I roll the scene, it has adopted my new changes onto the keyframe, and it's still doing this wave, and I could make it go really fast if I wanted to have a little psychedelic freak out party. And this is all the keyframe. I think to me is my favorite gadget component in Dreams, because it really can do so much. It can be really handy just for turning things off and on, and like I said, because of the fact that in one keyframe you can turn one value up, another value down. You don't need to have any sort of independent switches that are reversing signals or anything. And this is just one little tiny thing that hardly costs anything on the thermometer, and it's super easy to use. So I think that is about it for our quick little intro to Logic tutorial. And I'm not sure what the next one's going to be. But we'll see you next time. Stop by dreamsworst.com. Thanks for watching.